Okay. Hello, everyone. So I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Denny Pond, and I'm here to present our final project for Finance 6110 Financial Modeling. All right, so let's go on forward. All right, so over the course of this class, Dr. Shirley has hammered quite a few Excel skills to us, right? Data manipulation and models into our head, right? She has taught us some best practices, including labeling hard codes blue and formulas black, and highlighting inputs and outputs. And for here, as for our final project we are to complete for this class, I'm building a personal finance model. It is a realistic one to me because of my future goals. And some of the finance topics that I'll be touching on today would be the time value of money principle and certain tax adjustments that will be crucial to my model. Special thanks to Dr. Shirley for being such an outstanding professor, and always being super engaging to the class. Okay, so enough for the housekeeping. Let's jump in. Okay, so uh, my model would have three separate parts. First, the most important one that I'll be working on would be able to tell me how much extra capital, or in this case, it'll be loans that I have to take out to go to law school. This will let me see how much money, assuming how much money I would take out in loans, assuming a 3-year law school, either being public non-resident, or private each year with an adjusted price based on a regression model. This is a very specific model that I think I've built for pretty much just for me and I guess for anybody who is working at the moment and want to go to law school. So that's an important assumption. It's all 3 years of law school. I'm assuming that person is going to be working all 3 years. This model should be simple enough for anyone to use as the functions are already set in there. Inputs already can be just inputted with a macro button, right? All right, so and then the second part, I have three parts, remember? Second part is the savings that I put aside invested into a S&P 500 ETF and how much it would grow factoring in an aggregated inflation as well as a projected market growth all the way up to the year 2099. And the last part is what I expect to make after law school if I obtain my dream job as an SEC attorney adjusted to locality pay and a COLA index. Okay, next is slide 4. One. And then in slide 4, my model assumes that I will be working all 3 years of law school. That's like I was just saying. Assumes that my regression forecast of 3-year cost of law school is mostly correct and constant. And assumes numbers used for aggregated inflation for investment purposes here is mostly correct and constant. And assumes my initial Chattanooga living expenses, which is already inputted in my model, is as close to average as possible, and assumes the CPI inflation rate used to adjust rent, groceries, utilities is mostly correct and constant. Okay. All right. So now on to for slide 5. Okay, and from here on, I'll go to my Excel file soon. But before that, I just want to kind of let everyone know what Excel skills were used. I did use data tables to find out the savings depending on pay, given percentage I put back. I used XLOOKUP multiple times and throughout my model, and I could not recommend that any more than it's just such a good function to use, way more than the index match one. And I also use regression analysis to forecast the cost of 3-year law schools in the future. I use a message box and VBA for inputs. That's pretty much the bulk of my VBA codes I use in the model. And I use data validation for a list I already made to be used as inputs in a tab labeled Dream Job. I also use SUMIF functions here and there, most notably in my S&P 500 ETF tab to sum up all the investments for the given year. And so more will be shown in project, and I'll now shift gears to move into my Excel model now. Okay, let me just switch over. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so in my Excel model, if I've mentioned this or not yet, but this part of the model assumes that I will live in Chattanooga from 2022 to 2030 and as for all the base inputs here in cells B3, B7, and B12, right, are hard codes based on my own expenses. Okay, the inflation can be inputted to be whatever the user wants it to be with the macro sign button on the sheet as well. And for good measure, I included an average annualized monthly inflation from the CPI data, right? And for column L through M, it is pretty intuitive. This pretty much takes all the data from back here and just adds it up here, right? But the most important part would be you need to select a year here, and this automatically generates a rolling 3 years as well for you, right? And with that said, you just have clicked on the button here, enter rent, enter inflation for rent, grocery expense, grocery inflation, utility expense, utility inflation, and then for the years, so it knows the row. So M17 is the most important one, which will factor into capital needed here. So for capital needed, this slide, the user just needs to click on the macro sign button for the most part and just begin to input all the cells here that are highlighted in gray, right? All of these. So this will impact here, and again, to show you the VBA code actually that I was mentioning before. It's pretty much the bulk of it is pretty much just the message box, right? Okay, so this will just prompt you to select savings percentage of your salary and a pay raise here that will flow into your S&P 500 investment. I'll talk about later. So the most complicated function that I had here actually is the taxes that I do, right? Look at all this, right? All this F statements. I have to make sure that the salary is being correctly taxed, right? So the tax is applied after deducting the savings that will be put into an investment account into an S&P 500 ETF. And after calculating taxes for year 1, 2, and 3, we go ahead and take that out of the income that has already put savings back, right? We then arrive at the $130,658.66 for net income. And then we then add back any current savings to that as well. Then we factor out the 3-year monthly bills, and we solve for real excess income after bills in D20, right? D20 is right here, which is the excess income, right? And from here, we will actually have to go ahead and take a look at my other tabs here that says law school regression. And like I was saying earlier, this stuff right here is pretty much the MX plus B, right? We're trying to forecast this law school here. This is for public law school. And I have them grouped, and this is public non-resident, and this is private. And you can see that in here and forecasted. So pretty much in the earlier slide, in the earlier sheet, it pretty much posts this information. When you input like a beginning year 2020, it will pull this cost for 3 years for those 3 years, which is adjusted up here. Right. So, and then it actually pulls public, non-resident, or private first, and then it goes and looks at these guys, and then it just looks at this, right? Go all the way back. Okay. So now we will now look at the ending portions of it. So that puts it in there depending on what year you want to start this. That's just the law school cost between basically 2024 or 2022 to 2024. And this would actually be the amount that's needed to cover for law school if I was going to go down this path right here, right? With the pay raise is 8% here. But for the sake of time being, this should actually be 5% for most of my project here. Okay, so I was saying, I have to save that real quick so that it changes over, right? So $130,658.66. I kind of that I said earlier. Okay, and now we drop into the S&P 500 ETF investment. So this is quite a fun one to do, I think. So assuming no fees and transaction costs, previously we saw that my savings rates in my model was 10%. Which means my first year savings should have been 55,000 or 55,000 divided by 12, right? Which is in cell B3. Oop. Cell B3 right there, right? And so I divided that and showed you it's in cell B3. And so the tricky thing here about this slide is I'm assuming a 5% pay raise right now. And that's actually from here. You also click this button to put in your constant pay raise and like an S&P projected market return that you want, right? And the funny thing is actually H2 is the most important part of this. I made sure that it is actually growing in from like say 1/1/2022 to 1/1/2023, and make sure that the growth here is about 5%. So I had to make sure the formula here is actually, I guess, de-annualized, so that each month represents a portion of the 5% all leading up to at the beginning of 2023, it would actually be 5% from $458 initially put in, right? So from here on out, let's see. So I want to say that, as you can see in cell H2, like I was telling you, this is dependent. Everything here is dependent on that as well. And then row 3 has a sum if function, which adds up all the associated years with it, right? And this all flows into this right here. I actually had to get the tax rates again, real tax rates on whenever you actually take out the money. So this is actually whenever this is inflation adjusted money that you need to take out that is actually being taken out after taxes as well, right? So let's see. And I want to say that one more thing about the slide is that the inflation rate here is using the aggregated inflation that's used here. This is me using basically the average of each year, but I'm taking out the highest of each year or highest inflation of the years, and only averaging just the middle portions, not the maximum in portions, right? So this can be slightly not skewed by outliers, right? Okay, and then this is the chart like I can show you all right here. It's cool, and just click on this, you can change it, right? All right, next but not least, dream job. So for my dream job here, I actually have this in 3 scenarios: minimum, base, and maximum scenario. So there are actually 17 pay grades according to the SK. For this time's sake, SK employees. That's where I got it, and that's from that website, secgovernment.com or government, right? So 17 pay grades, and this is pretty much just you select the pay grades, you select the pay grade, and then you select your savings, your pay raise, and whichever city that you work for the headquarters. And then inside here, there's actually about like I think 12 headquarters cities that you can work in SEC. And so the locality adjustment here is based off of the locality adjustment here and locality pay. So you get extra money if you work in any of these states than like the minimum pay, right? Versus the minimum. So in this case, this is a minimum, absolute minimum you can have in this job at pay grade 1. Absolute minimum for this is actually the maximum pay grade you can have for pay grade 1, right? So all of this flows into this COLA adjusted excess income from one, savings, and also taxes, and also being adjusted for COLA, which is down here, COLA index, right? So saying that the USA has a COLA index of 100, everybody else is being basically compared to that one. So I took the average of all the other factors of COLA, averaged them up. I did 100 subtracted by the average of each, and then this number is basically percent cheaper compared to the rest of the USA, right? So you take that and you factor that in by multiplying it 1 plus or times 1 plus that number to actually get what that number would be if you were to live in that state and how much that money really is worth, right? And this is next year's play for good measure, just to keep everything consistent. Okay, so and that is it. Thank you all for coming to my presentation. Have a great rest of the year, everyone.